Don't be a drag, just be a queen. Don't be a drag, just be a queen. Give yourself prudence and love your friends. Subway can rejoice your truth.
Good morning, buenos días a todos. We're gonna get started in a couple of seconds. All right. Welcome to today's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer/questioning, intersex, asexual/agender, two-spirit and plus, belonging and student success, breaking barriers and expanding financial aid access webinar. We are so excited to have you here. So some meeting logistics and reminders. This meeting is going to be for 60 minutes. We do have staff ready on standby, so please feel free to use the Zoom Q&A feature just to make sure that you feel supported. This webinar will be recorded. It will be posted on YouTube, our website, and will be followed up or shared in a follow-up email following this webinar. We do have access to closed captioning, so if you need to use that, please toggle the Zoom switch on and off for that feature to be used. And lastly, join us on our social media. Feel free to follow us on our handle below in the next slide so that you can learn more about webinars like this one and other events that CSEC does. Awesome. It's so great to see where everyone's joining us from today. And so for those of you who don't know who CSEC is on the next slide, we are the principal state agency responsible for administering financial aid programs for students who are attending public and private universities, colleges, and career technical educational schools in California. The Commission's mission is promoting educational equity by making post-secondary educational affordable for all Californians by sharing resources, such as events like this one. So on behalf of CSEC, we are so grateful to have you all here. Next slide. Quickly overviewing the agenda for today, we're going to have a welcome and important updates. We're going to talk about financial aid and student success in a context setting perspective. We're going to have partner presenters speak through a panelist, including Elisa Moncrief and Sean Brick. And lastly, we'll conclude with some reminders. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to hand it over to our Chief Deputy Director, Catalina Misler. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. We're here at the Student Aid Commission. We're here located in the Sacramento area, and it's a hot one for us, I'm sure, as other parts of the state. But if you see my makeup melting, that's because the heat's starting to come through. Just want to thank everyone for being here. I know that, we are all in June, and we are all grateful for all of the work that has been done to get students through the process and graduations and all of the ceremonies and celebrations that are taking place. Thank you to all of you who support these students and get them through that process and get them through graduation and appreciate all of the work and the time that it takes. I know that many of you here today are very dedicated, work hands-on with students, and we just want to appreciate and show our gratitude to all of you who are in that work. So as this June webinar here on our webinar series, we're uplifting students, and we're continuing to recognize cohorts of students and being able to share the tools and the toolkits the resources that the Commission has to offer to help students. And in this one is we want to continue to break these barriers for these students populations, and we want to continue to expand financial aid access. And we know a lot of students have questions, and because of unfortunately some of the information that they've received, and they themselves think that they may disqualify or not qualify for financial aid. But the purpose of these webinars is to provide you with that information and to continue providing the resources to be able to share with these students and families and to inform them that some of the misinformation out there it may stem from themselves and others, but we want to make sure that we're breaking those myths as well, and being able to provide them with the necessary information so that they can take those next steps and file for financial aid and receive the aid that they need so that they can continue and persist and achieve their educational goals. So that's our purpose here. So with that, I want to introduce our California Student Aid Commissioner, Angel Rodriguez. And he is, since I've been here, as many of you know, I've been here for many, many years and have seen commissioners come and go. And I know which ones have their hearts deeply dedicated into the work that we do here. And they join not just to join to sit in a seat, but they join here to be part of the decision making and policies and just to be able to share the experiences and the lived experiences that they had in going through as well as going through their higher education. Angel Rodriguez was appointed to the commission by Governor Newsom in 2021. He serves as the chair of the Student Impact Outreach and Communications Committee, supporting statewide efforts to increase awareness and uptake of Cal Grants, Middle Class Scholarship, California Dream Map application, and the various programs that the commission administers. Commissioner Rodriguez is Associate Vice Chancellor of Government Relations, Strategic Communications, and Grants at the San Bernardino Community College District. His work centers on aligning policy, public funding, and partnerships to expand college access, strengthen workforce pathways, and ensure investments deliver tangible benefits for students and communities. We are proud to have Commissioner Rodriguez as a representative here at the Student Aid Commission, and all of the work and all of the innovation that he has shared with us, not only of the work that he does here, but what he also encourages the commission to also provide and to serve our students. So with that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Rodriguez.
Thank you for that, Catalina. That was really heartwarming, and the feeling is mutual. Everyone here at CSAC, there's so much love here, and I just want to say good morning to everyone because it really is a labor of love what we do here at the Student Aid Commission, and it's been an honor serving on this commission as a governor's appointee since 2021, and I know that all of you, wherever you are in California, you have that same kind of love for our students. So thank you for that. I'll just briefly share a little bit about myself. As Catalina mentioned, I've been serving I'll say a volunteer on the board of the California Student Aid Commission since 2021. And my day job is in the Inland Empire as Associate Vice Chancellor at the San Bernardino Community College District. But I just want to thank you because you are just choosing to start your morning with us, choosing to start your morning thinking about students and how we can best support them. And so I want to thank each of you. I want to thank the team at CSAC for putting this webinar together, which, by the way, happens to be the very first Pride webinar that we have. So pretty historic day today. So really, really excited and really glad that we get to start the day also with Lady Gaga in the background. So really, really thank you for everyone for making today and this conversation possible. But I also know that this work and what you do is not easy work. As you know, so many of our students today are carrying a lot of pressures right now. And honestly, I think so many of us are too. There's a lot of pressures, a lot of stress on our plate in today's society. But I know that we're all here for one reason, and that is for the student. And for me, I will say that this topic is very personal to me. I'll share that I always knew that I was gay. I just didn't tell anyone growing up. And the reason was I was afraid. So instead, I kept myself busy with school. I focused on getting good grades, graduating, making my family proud. And after I graduated, I said, it's time. I need to come out to them. And I was so lucky. My family loved me before I came out. And I will tell you that they loved me even after I came out. But I know not everyone gets that experience. And that's one of that's one of the reasons I really appreciate each of you. Because when students don't have that support at home, you are often that support. You become the person that they trust. You become the person who helps them navigate school, financial aid, and sometimes life. You become home for them. I will say that also personally, when the Great Recession hit my family, we lost our home and we lost our small business. But had it not been for Cal Grant, Pell Grants, financial aid, and higher education, I don't know where we would be. It really saved us. And that's one of the reasons I care so deeply about this work and why I'm so grateful to serve on this commission. But as we think about today, college affordability is one of the biggest concerns facing families, facing students. And at CSAC, we're working every single day to make sure that financial aid is easier to understand and making sure that it's easier to access so that more students can pursue their goals and their dreams. But before we get started, I know you're going to get a lot of information, but before we get there, I'd like to ask one thing of you. Think about one student. Maybe it's someone you're working with right now. Maybe it's someone you've been worried about. Maybe it's someone who reminds you of yourself. Keep that student in mind today. Choose to be here. Choose to be present in this webinar because somewhere in California right now, there's a student who needs us to get this right. So thank you for starting your morning with us. And with that, it is my pleasure to turn it back to Catalina Missler.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez. Heartfelt words, and this just always thinking about it's not just the actions that we take, but the words that we say, and our words do have power. And I always remember growing up, my parents used to tell me, your tongue can bring life or it can bring death. And I always remember, it's what we say. And even as growing up as a child and some of the things that, kids can be mean. We experience kids being mean, and sometimes it's things that they hear and how they're taught. And sometimes just, kids just want to follow and say things that they say. So you just have to remember that when you think about that person and you even feel that someone needs for you to say a kind word, then that it can just change their day, their life. And as we meet with students and what they're going through and sometimes the burdens that they carry, it's so important that the words that we say to them and how we are there to support them can change their direction. And we hear too many sad stories every day about students and others who are going through things, and no one really had seen it or thought about it, but it's just a reminder that think about that person, as Commissioner Rodriguez has said, and reach out to them and make a difference. Or the students that come to the counter or are afraid to come to the counter, reach out to them, especially those that we are servants here, right? We're public servants. And so it's really, it's our job and our duty and our purpose here is to really change people's lives, and it starts with being positive. So thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez, for your advice. So as we are here to bring you information about the financial aid and our processes and ultimately bringing student success, we're here to share information about what we have as resources for the LGBTQ student population. Next slide. Again, our blueprint goals here at the Student Aid Commission are three blueprint goals: is equitable access, equitable support, and equitable success. And in the access, the commission is continuously looking at where are we? Where did we land with the applications? Who are we missing? What regions do we need to focus on? What actions, what steps can we take? Who can be our partners, and what resources that we have, and what policies need to be changed? It's all part of our blueprint goals, and continuing to improve and to look for ways to reach student populations, especially those who are not reaching or who don't understand or who don't want to take that next step. So the Student Aid Commission here and our partners and stakeholders are here to support these students and ultimately get them to complete and to achieve their goals of a credential or degree or a certificate, and ultimately get into the workforce. And they are here, and they come to campuses, and they come to the commission, and they come to other organizations to get their questions answered. And that's what our goal here and our purpose is here, is to get them through that process and get them successfully completed. Next slide. So there's been a lot of changes, when in 24-25, when the Better FAFSA was launched. And, I think that, initially we just saw that the application just had a lot of things and anything new that launches, we know that there's going to be bugs in it and we're going to have to do fixes. And And I think that going through that process and what students and families, what they faced in completing that application was somewhat difficult. And we had to pivot in some areas. We opened up the CADA application so that the students that are mixed status families could apply. And those students that were not able to get through the process or chose not to complete and submit their application, they had an option here. And so as those changes continue to be made, we see improvements in the FAFSA. And, I think we recognize, and a lot of students and families recognize the simplification of the application. It's not perfect, but there's a lot of families who are seeing that progress has been made in the application and it is becoming easier for them to submit. But their changes also have made, there's differences in where students still have a lot of questions, and the gender marker on the application for the FAFSA now is just, it has been changed, and it's just it's the gender question is just limited to the male and female question. So I think a lot of students have questions that, how does this impact them? The Pride Scholars and the communities, is this change is going to impact me and my application in the process? And so one of the questions is that if I have a different name on my Social Security Administration record, will I not get financial aid at my college? And so there's all of the public California community colleges, UC, CSU. They allow students to use their lived names and pronouns in most campus systems without legal documentation. And these updates will appear on class rosters, on student IDs, and in the learning system. So legal names are still required on the official records, like the transcripts and financial aid applications and payroll, and colleges may ask for additional forms of documentation to confirm their students' identity in the name of the financial aid award. And what that it is like in terms of with the California Student Aid Commission, receiving the financial aid, you have to have everything through the financial aid. The FAFSA have to be the official records because it does all of these matches against the Social Security Administration, and so that if there's not matches, and then it pens the application. And so there are opportunities where schools are also looking at their processes, and you'll hear more from our panelists today of what they're doing to streamline these processes for these students. Another question that comes up is I no longer identify with the sex and/or the name I was assigned to at birth, and how should I complete my demographic information on the FAFSA or the CADA? So again, the FAFSA student should use their current legal name as it appears in their Social Security Administration record. And it helps the application match, as I mentioned earlier, to be able to match and process through. Although for the CADA, students still can use their preferred name if that's the name their school used when submitting the GPA information. If your preferred name is different from the name listed on the high school GPA record, the application can still be matched, but it may require a manual review by the Student Aid Commission staff or by the campus staff. So the CADA application will continue to recognize the preferred name. And then another question is for questions about changing your name and gender marker with the SSA, visit the National Center for Transgender Equity. You can also find assistance through the Trans Legal Services Network. So there's resources out there to help answer these questions, but we hope that this information, if there's practitioners here, that if this is something you haven't heard yet, we hope that you can continue to share that with others so that we can help these students when they come to us to answer questions. So appreciate you being able to join this webinar to learn that, but we also want to be able to share the information and pass it on. Next slide. So this is something new. So under the Provisional Student Aid Index, there are questions on the FAFSA, and questions 5, 6, and 7. And if a student can answer yes to one of the student personal circumstances or the student homelessness questions, so they'll be required to include parent information unless they have an unusual circumstance. So question is, do unusual circumstances prevent the student from contacting their parents, or would contacting their parents pose a risk to the student? So if the student answers yes, and they are considered provisionally independent, they'll receive a provisional student aid index. So it processes them through with the provisional student aid index, and institutions are able to identify those students that have the provisional SAI. So some campuses will reach out to the students and follow up with them. And others, as a student, you may need to contact the financial aid office and be required to submit some supporting documentation. So it's the financial aid office who will determine if they can complete a dependency override and not require the parent information. But we have an expert on our panel today who works in the financial aid office who'll be able to provide more information on this. Next slide. So what are we here for? We're here, these webinars are being brought to you to provide information, to have our experts join us and provide information on what's happening on the ground at campuses or the segment offices. And then just bring folks here to really share their stories and to also let you know that you're not alone in this. And we're here all to support each other in the work that we do. So our call to action as we near the September 2nd deadline for community college students and foster youth students, we want you to continue working with students to apply for financial aid by the September 2nd deadline. Continue to encourage them, connect with Cash for College, regional coordinator organizations who are continuing to host webinars or in-person events, and then CalSOAP. And CalSOAP offers also opportunities to get one-on-one hands assistance from their student support and also from various organizations that they connect with to help students and families walk through the financial aid application. And then continue to look at our website and check our Cash for College events that are being held, and also with our partners. We partner with the Community College Chancellor's Office and the events that statewide. So, and if you ever need assistance directly and you can't find something, don't hesitate to contact the California Student Aid Commission. We can see what resources are available and provide you with that information. So share our Pride resources on our link and just join us in our support for these students and being able to provide them with the resources and guidance that they need to get through that financial aid process. All right, and with that, I will now turn it over to Nicole Kangas, who will be presenting our partner panels. Nicole?
Good morning, everyone. Happy Pride Month. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Before I introduce our panel, I'll introduce myself. I'm Nicole Kangas, CSAC's Public Information Officer, and my pronouns are she, they. I'm the proud parent of a transgender daughter who will be transferring from our city college to UCLA this fall. This would not have been possible without state financial aid programs like Cal Grant and the Middle Class Scholarship. So today's conversation is very meaningful and purposeful as well as personal to me. So as we begin, it's important to recognize the realities many Pride students continue to navigate. Some students face bullying, discrimination, isolation, a lack of representation in curriculum and faculty, or challenging family dynamics. These experiences can create real barriers to educational success. When our schools, colleges, and support systems intentionally work to reduce those barriers, the impact can be transformative, helping students stay enrolled, feel a sense of belonging, and in some cases, providing support that is truly life-changing and even life-saving. Next slide, please. So we're joined today by Sean Brick, whose pronouns are he, him, his, and Sean serves as Associate Vice Provost of Student Financial Support for the University of California Office of the President, where he oversees policy for UC's $1 billion financial aid program, residency classification for tuition purposes, and more. And with more than 2 decades of leadership experience spanning financial aid, admissions, and higher education policy, Sean brings a wealth of knowledge and perspective to today's discussion. So welcome, Sean. And our second panelist is Elisa Moncrief, whose pronouns are she, her, hers. And Elisa is a financial aid counselor at San Diego State University. As a first-generation college student, Elisa earned a bachelor's degree in communication and media studies, during which time she participated in Brigham Young University of Hawaii's Affirmation Club and experienced firsthand the importance of community, belonging, and support for LGBTQIA2S+ students. Today, she helps students navigate financial aid while connecting them with resources that foster success and inclusion. So welcome, Elisa. So I'm going to ask that you both share your thoughts on each of these questions. So I'll begin with Elisa. How has your queer identity shaped your work in supporting students and families?
All right, thank you very much, Nicole. Yes, so my name's Elisa. I not only had the pleasure of participating within the Affirmation Club when I attended BYU Hawaii, but I also had the great opportunity of actually helping found that. It was the first Affirmation Club of its kind on the BYU Hawaii campus. It took a lot of effort, but the most pivotal and memorable part of it was the fact that it did take a lot of effort, but it was the very first time, it was my senior year of college, and it was the very first time I'd ever seen administrators on my campus show support for this kind of organization, which is not necessarily the, in every single higher education sphere, that's not standard. So it's been really amazing to see within our own community here at San Diego State that we do have so much data, we have so much real lived experience that we can go off of to see the real impacts that we have when we support this community. There were a lot of times within my own undergrad career that I did feel alone and I didn't feel the support of people on my campus. But it was a case of, you kept going, you persevered, maybe you pushed it down a little bit to focus on school. But it was really a case of once I opened that door and once I found that community, I saw that it was just there for me all along. So in my own experience here working as a financial aid administrator, I keep that framework whenever I'm working with any kind of student, but specifically those who are within our Pride community. You may think that they have all the support in the world. You may be privileged to work in a community where it's at the forefront, but not everybody has that. So when we take the opportunity to use that framework and understand that this may be a situation where the student has never felt support, you may be the only person providing that for them, which is very common within the financial aid sphere. But it's our duty. And I do want to repeat the words of Catalina. It's our duty and our purpose to help change students' lives. So I definitely want to emphasize that here.
And Sean, how has your identity shaped that?
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. As a queer person, you are very familiar with assumptions being made that don't actually apply to you. And I think you can translate that into your work in the sense that you try to, I think it's helped me sort of recognize some of the assumptions that we make in financial aid or in higher education in general that don't apply to everybody. And so I think that that's helped me. And I do think we're in a moment just more broadly in financial aid where we've really shifted from we've shifted from a kind of one size fits all approach to a much more nuanced approach to how much students need, how to engage with students. this applies not just for LGBTQ students, but for undocumented students or first generation students who maybe just aren't used to engaging with the bureaucracy. And so I think we've been witnessing on our campuses, a lot of students will um, go to another office where they feel more comfortable first, and then that's the office that connects them with financial aid. And that's certainly true with our queer students. It's also true, like I said, with some other populations. And I think, we've tried to really adapt our practices so that we in the financial aid office will accept that handoff more more gracefully. So um, I think that's those are my thoughts.
Thank you both. My next question for both of you, we can start with Elisa again. How does your segment in campus or campuses support queer students pursuing college, career, training, or seeking help in accessing basic needs, financial aid, health and wellness, and on or off-campus support?
Yeah, so to echo a bit of what Sean just mentioned, a huge part of being able to provide that support is becoming an advocate on your campus and connecting yourself with others. So, oftentimes I think that we can get stuck in our role as financial aid administrators, doing the day-to-day tasks, but it is our responsibility to make those connections when possible. So if the financial aid office here at SDSU, we have a great relationship with our Pride Center, our Women's Resource Center, and our Basic Needs Center. So I'm um, one of our staff members who serve as a direct point of contact for these student groups. So we have a few counselors here on our team who also provide support. So if we have emergency situations or we have students who just want a little bit more information, not everything is an emergency, but we're there and we know that when these students come to us, they're our first priority. I know also I was able to speak with one of our Pride Center directors, just talking about some of the support they're able to provide and wanted to highlight. So one of the great things that we do is a lot of our a lot of the employment opportunities within the Pride Center itself and our Women's Resource Center are for student employees. So we know that having peer support is essential to meet the needs of these student groups. Exactly like Sean said, students are not always going to reach out directly to us as administrators or staff. So being able to provide them somebody who's kind of a middle ground, a little bit of a liaison that they feel a little bit more comfortable speaking to. The ability to have that provides a space where we can educate students about all of the resources they have available to them. We can provide peer mentorship. We can focus on creating safe zones on campus. So being able to have a collaborative sphere and a sphere where communication channels are continuously expanding, it's essential to the success of our student body.
Yeah, I love what you said about having safe spaces, but also safe people. So same question for Sean. How does your segment or campuses support queer students pursuing college career training, seeking help in accessing basic needs, financial aid, health and wellness, and on or off campus support?
Sure. So I dropped some links into the chat. One way that we start to serve this population is to start having better data. And so you can see on the Info Center, the UC Info Center link that I put into the chat, that you can look at enrollment data at UC by campus across the system and disaggregate by sexual orientation and gender identity. You can also see we can just repost the links after the bottom here. We have a basic needs dashboard as well, and you also disaggregate that by sexual orientation and gender identity. And unfortunately, one of the things you will see is that our LGBTQ students are more likely to be food and housing insecure than the general population. So, I think part of serving these students is not sort of just sugarcoating all the great things we're doing, but also examine places where we're falling short. We do have, and I know CSAC posted the links to our resource center. So every campus that does have a resource center. And we also do have a system-wide policy on gender recognition and live name, as Catalina mentioned. And I'm sort of going through all the negative things here, but that is an area where, as we've been talking about with changes to the FAFSA, it feels like we're less able to live up to those policies, that the aspirations that we have around live name. And we recently found out, for example, that the National Student Clearinghouse will no longer be using live name. So I think, we're in a moment where I think we need to acknowledge the anxiety that our students, particularly our students who are trans or non-binary, are in, and be ready to continue the fight, right? To make sure that we can have systems, maybe not the next 3 years, but the next 10 years, make sure that those systems are made more friendly to those students. And you often hear disability rights advocates correctly say that when you improve the world for disabled people, you're improving it for everyone. And I think that's true here as well, because there are people who aren't trans or non-binary, who have a different name they wish to identify with. I think it just makes it a more humane environment as we get there. Not sure if I answered all your questions, Nicole, but that's a range of things that we're thinking about at UC.
Yeah, and that really hits home, with my daughter. She's trying to change her legal name to her lived name and her lived identity. And but how is that going to impact the FAFSA? And that's really a question that we're asking. So question 3, Lisa, what are you seeing or hearing on the ground? And how can K-12 administrators as well as college professionals better serve Pride students?
Yeah, so in my communication with our different teams on campus, one of the themes that continuously got brought up was I do see that within like our group of Pride students on campus, within our queer communities, sometimes it is just difficult to start the conversation and start asking or know where to go if you do need help. So one of the most important things we can do is provide them, again, those spaces and be advocates for them. A lot of the times as I go through unusual circumstance appeals or dependency overrides, we'll hear, students going through difficult situations, but on the ground, we hear there are other students going through these similar situations, either being displaced from their families or experiencing unsafe conditions, but they have determined that their circumstances may not be as bad as someone else's. So they don't necessarily want to have that conversation, which is okay. However, when we are able to, even earlier on in their education, begin to educate students on what resources are available and how to go about accessing them. And then as they get into higher education, making sure that we as administrators and professionals are the ones who are doing as much outreach as possible. We want to make sure that these resources are at the forefront to encourage students to utilize them and also make them not seem so intimidating. I think within the financial aid sphere, it is just an intimidating process to a lot of students in general. So adding that additional layer of having to talk to about your own private circumstances can just be, I know in my own experience, it's not something I would have wanted to talk about with a stranger. So being able to, again, provide peer mentors, having those spaces where communication happens, and encouraging students to recognize that they don't have to be alone through these processes. The other piece is also providing those spaces for basic needs. That's a huge conversation that we're continuously having and continuously finding ways to improve. So whether that's as an administrator, participating in something you may not have participated before on your campus that has to do with our Pride community, queer community. Maybe a lot of the times we work through donations. So we have a community closet where people can go in and provide clothing for students for interviews, for just everyday life. And a lot of that is based on the involvement and the participation of our broader community. So just finding different ways that you can provide support, even if it's not showing up in person to events every single day. There are different things that we can be doing within our classrooms, within our offices to just disseminate as much information as possible.
I agree. There are so many resources out there, but students need that support and getting connected and making sure it's destigmatized for them as well. So same question for you, Sean. What are you hearing on the ground?
Yeah, so we meet with our LGBTQ center directors. They have a system-wide committee that they meet. And I would say that, right now what we're hearing is a lot of anxiety, particularly among trans and non-binary students. The thing I would say is, you know, and again, this is sort of broader than LGBTQ students, but I've heard of several UC leaders talk about how in moments of crisis or anxiety, it's important to communicate much more than you think you ought to. Because if you don't, people's imagination kind of runs wild. And so last year, I remember when the changes were made to the FAFSA, there was a group of community college faculty that pulled together some information and advice for queer students about filing for financial aid. And it was a great moment of just collaboration. Like we asked for permission, but we basically used the advice that the community college faculty had put together, created an information sheet and put it on our OP website, our Office of the President website, and then also shared it with campuses who pushed that information out to students. So I think it's just really important to, in some ways, over communicate in a moment like this. The other thing, sort of related to communication, just an example of some work that we've done at the Office of the President, or at the University of California, I should say, is we occasionally will have collaborative meetings between our LGBTQ center directors or a representative from that group meet with the financial aid directors, because a lot of times they're just, things that you do, we've developed these processes in financial aid over decades now, right? And sometimes you're blind to some of the things that you have in your practices that maybe are impacting students differentially. So a few years ago now, the LGBTQ Center, Resource Center director at UC Riverside met with our aid directors and said, one of the issues that comes up for her students are that, as we were sort of mentioning earlier, the dependency override issue. They're a queer student who has, a fraught relationship with their family. Maybe they, maybe not when they were applying as a new student, but they come out, while they're at the university and things change. And there's a way that you can tell the federal government, ignore the parent income and just focus on the student. But over the years, we've developed these processes to do that in the past would say things like, well, we need 2 letters from an independent source, for example, your pastor or your rabbi. And the LGBTQ, resource center director was like, for my students, a lot of them are not comfortable. They're not in a community of faith. They're not, so even just removing that language, like, sure, you can still accept a letter from a priest or a rabbi or a pastor, but just eliminating that language from the websites goes a long way to making it seem like a more welcoming process for queer students. And so as a result, we changed the language on our websites. We also decided that rather than 2 letters of support, we would accept 1 letter of support for a dependency override, including a letter from the LGBTQ Resource Center directors. Because as Nancy shared, like in some cases, she's like the only person that the student has come out to. So that's just an example, I guess, of trying to listen to our colleagues across the campus and adjust our practices to make it a better process.
Yeah, words matter, and over communicating, especially right now, because there is so much misinformation out there about financial aid in particular, too. All right, and so in one sentence, Elisa, what is one piece of advice you would give to financial aid administrators, college professionals, and higher education advocates to better serve students seeking to attain training or career aspirations? And then Sean, you can take the same question right after.
All right. One sentence. I would say you might assume that the work is being done on your campus or within your community because you have a Pride Center or because you have a collaborative group, but it is important that you make the effort to better understand this community and to better serve this community, because even small differences, like we've talked today, can have a huge impact.
Wow, I'm supposed to follow that. I would say connect with people across your organization, including those that you assume are doing the work, because your assumptions may not be correct.
Well, thank you. I really want to, from the bottom of my heart, express my gratitude for you joining us today, sharing your stories, your lived experiences, as well as the hard work that you're doing in your communities. So thank you so much. And then Sign a Queen, we can go to the next slide. I want to go back to Catalina's call to action and talk about some resource sharing that we can all do in our communities. So this one here, there's a statewide LGBTQ plus resource directory for community college staff and students, which compiles programs, resources, and safe space information across California's 116 community colleges. And similarly, all 23 CSU campuses have LGBT centers, and we have linked that webpage here. And UC's Hub for Resource Center information for all 10 campuses can also be accessed on this slide. Next slide, please. So another thing that we can all do is please reach out to students in your community who have not applied for financial aid yet. The Race to Submit deadline is approaching on June 30th. And the deadline for community college financial aid applications is September 2nd. So it's not too late for students to reach for their dreams this year. CSAC's theme for June's outreach toolkits is supporting our LGBTQIA2S plus students. And we have linked a social media graphic, sample caption, an FAQ, and resource guide on this slide that you can share. So now I'm going to turn it back over to CSAC's Chief Deputy Executive Director, Catalina Missler, who will be sharing some reminders with our webinar attendees. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I think this is, I think earlier I mentioned that the heat was going to make my makeup melt, but it's the tears, because just the love that is shared from our panelists and reminding us what our purpose is, and we sometimes take a job to make a living and to provide, but many of us stay in that work because of the impact that we make and the opportunities we have to help to support and change lives. So appreciate all of you that work with students and just listen and care for them and love them. So appreciate you all. Okay, so reminders, next slide. So again, we have our resources that we make available. Please visit our website. You can find a lot of our, if you're on our listserv, that you're receiving our special alerts and our grant operations memos and learning about the work that CSAC is doing with not only just the work, but reminders and information that you may need in working with your peers and your students. Also, we have a FAQ, and it's financial aid for LGBTQIA plus scholars in California. So make sure that you're able to access those and review all of our materials so that you can use them and share them with students and families. So just a reminder to continue looking at our website and see what we have, what we're providing for our guides and our toolkits. Next slide. And we have, we want you to save the date for October the 6th, 2026. We have our 2026 College Affordability Summit. It is now live and you can register. So we're going to have a lot of great sessions, and it is Unlocking the California Dream, Intentional Change and Focused Investments. So we will continue to update our site when we have more information about our panelists in the sessions. So make sure you save the date and register now. Next slide. And again, our reminders again to visit our website for our resources and our toolkits, attend free Train the Trainer or Cash for College workshops. Sign up again for our listserv. If you're not on there, you're not receiving those, sign up, get right information. And then remember, we have our Race to Submit dashboard for the high schools and also community colleges. So remember to track the FAFSA-CADA submission rates on our dashboard so that you can see how students are doing. Now for our 26-27 application season for high school seniors, our deadline for our counts and to identify the top high schools is June the 30th. So we're continuing, we're pushing for that September 2nd as well. But we want you to know that the race is still on. And so please make sure that you continue to check and to identify what students and what schools are doing to reach to their students. We are working with various districts and providing them information. I know CalSOAP and the Cash for College RCOs are continuing to reach out to those students who have not yet applied. We sent over 170,000 communications to students who we've identified as not yet completing a FAFSA and a CADA. We actually dropped a snail mail. So hopefully, I know that we're hearing from parents saying, what is this? What does this mean? So we're continuing to reach out to those students who have not yet filed or haven't made a decision. Just continue to remind them that even if you haven't decided to go yet to a community college, fill out the application, see what resources are available for you. So continuing to encourage all of you to reach out to students and families to get their application in. Next slide. And our next webinar is July the 9th, and it's Financial Aid, an Entry Point for Education and Training Opportunities. So please make sure that you also save that date and continue to join our webinars. Next slide. So thank you everyone for joining us. Continue to reach out to CSAC if there's any needs from you. We've got great teams on our school support side and helping both high schools and colleges. We're here for you. Remember, we're not alone in this. We all have the same role in supporting students and hoping to reach and give them guidance and answers that they need to take those next steps and just to continue to support those students. So appreciate all of you and the work that you do. And we will see you in July. Thank you.